In just 9 minutes, uncover the most explosive insights from Theo Von's must-watch conversation with political commentator Candace Owens. From media manipulation to political corruption, healthcare scams, and global power plays, Owens reveals hard-hitting truths that challenge the mainstream narrative. Do watch till the end. You won't believe what she exposes. Here are 10 key takeaways from the podcast. Takeaway 1: Media is about control, not truth. Candace Owens believes that the mainstream media does not exist to inform the public, but to control what people think. She argues that big media companies work to protect those in power rather than question them. According to her, the media decides what topics are acceptable for discussion and actively silences or discredits those who challenge the official narrative. She explains that independent creators on platforms like YouTube and podcasts have become a major threat to traditional media because they give people unfiltered opinions. This is why big media companies are now trying to buy or control independent platforms. For example, she talks about how Fox News fired conservative voices like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, but later tried to regain control by acquiring Red Seat Ventures, a company that handled advertising for many independent conservative podcasters. This, she says, is proof that legacy media is struggling to maintain its influence and is now trying to infiltrate independent spaces instead of competing fairly. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2. Fear is used to manipulate the public. Candace believes that fear is one of the most powerful tools that governments and media use to control people. When people are scared, they are less likely to question authority and more likely to obey whatever rules are given to them. She gives the example of the COVID-19 pandemic, where governments used fear to push strict lockdowns and vaccine mandates. Many people who questioned these measures were labeled as conspiracy theorists, even though some of their concerns later turned out to be true. She argues that by keeping people afraid, those in power can limit freedom without much resistance. For example, she talks about how people were pressured into taking the vaccine without knowing all the facts. Later, when some side effects were revealed, many who had been skeptical from the beginning were proven right. But by then, the damage had already been done and governments never took responsibility. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3. Investigative journalism comes with risks. Owens reveals that she has faced multiple legal threats due to her investigative reporting. She believes that exposing the truth is dangerous because powerful people do not want their secrets revealed. She shares how she has been sued twice but won both cases, proving that her work is based on facts. She talks about her recent investigation into Brigitte Macron, the wife of French President Emmanuel Macron. She discovered inconsistencies in the official story about Brigitte's past, but instead of addressing the claims, the media ignored the story completely. According to her, this is an example of how the media protects certain individuals while attacking others for much smaller controversies. For example, she compares this to how the media went after Melania Trump during Donald Trump's presidency. Every aspect of Melania's life was scrutinized, but when similar or worse questions arise about political figures who align with mainstream narratives, the media remains silent. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4. The government does not serve the people. Owens argues that most politicians do not actually care about the well-being of the people. Instead, they focus on maintaining power and helping their wealthy donors. She explains that both Democrats and Republicans are guilty of this, and that the system is designed to give the illusion of choice, while both sides secretly work together to keep things the same. She discusses how bills passed by Congress are often thousands of pages long, making it impossible for regular people to understand what is actually being done. Most of these bills contain hidden deals that benefit corporations and lobbyists, while the public gets little to no benefit. For example, she highlights how Congress uses emergency spending bills to pass things that have nothing to do with the actual crisis. She believes that these tricks are used to ensure that the government continues to grow in size and power. Now, let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5. Term limits would change everything. Owens is a strong supporter of term limits for politicians. She believes that many of America's problems come from the fact that career politicians stay in power for decades and focus more on getting reelected than actually helping the country. She explains that if politicians knew they had only a few years in office, they would focus on making real changes instead of playing political games. Right now, Many of them treat their government positions as lifetime careers, and their main goal is to gain power, not serve the people. For example, she points out that politicians like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden have been in government for over 40 years, but have little to show for it. She contrasts this with Thomas Massie, a congressman who supports shorter, simpler bills and actually tries to limit government overreach. We're halfway through the video. Thank you for sticking with us this far. If you're enjoying it, please give us a thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to comment below. To see more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6. The healthcare system is a scam. Owens criticizes the American healthcare system, calling it one of the biggest scams in the country. She argues that medical prices are artificially inflated and that patients are being exploited for profit. She supports Trump's executive order on healthcare price transparency, which forces hospitals and insurance companies to disclose real prices up front. She believes that if people could see the actual costs, hospitals would have to compete fairly, and prices would drop. For example, she talks about how patients are often charged hundreds of dollars for a single dose of Tylenol. If people knew these prices in advance, they would simply bring their own medicine or choose a cheaper option. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7. The U.S. should mind its own business. Owens questions why the United States is involved in so many foreign conflicts. She argues that the U.S. should focus on its own problems instead of constantly trying to fix other countries. She believes that many of these wars are not actually about democracy or human rights, but about benefiting the military-industrial complex and other powerful groups. For example, she challenges the idea that America needs allies in the Middle East. She believes that this is just an excuse to keep sending money and weapons to foreign governments, even when there is no clear benefit to the American people. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8. Multiculturalism does not always work. Owens argues that not all cultures can mix well together. While she supports legal immigration, she believes that new citizens should respect American values and traditions. She explains that some cultural beliefs completely contradict American principles, and forcing different groups to live together without common values can lead to conflict and division. For example, she mentions how some cultures accept child marriage or extreme religious laws, which go against basic human rights. She believes that America should not feel pressured to accept immigrants from cultures that do not align with its core values. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9. Politics has become performative. Owens believes that modern politics is more about creating viral moments than solving real problems. Politicians and activists focus on public image rather than making meaningful changes. For example, she criticizes Black Lives Matter for turning serious social issues into branding opportunities. She believes that instead of encouraging strong communities, many modern movements focus on victimhood, which keeps people feeling helpless. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10. The truth is often labeled conspiracy. Owens argues that many ideas dismissed as conspiracy theories later turn out to be true. She believes that the term conspiracy theorist is often used to silence people who ask difficult questions. For example, she recalls how COVID-19's origins were initially dismissed as a conspiracy, but later even government officials admitted that the virus may have come from a lab leak. Here is a brief introduction about Candace Owens. Candace Owens is a political commentator and podcaster known for her investigative series and interviews. You can watch new episodes of her show, Candace, every week. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like below and share this video in your WhatsApp groups. You can also discuss about this video by commenting below. To get more such videos in your timeline, press the subscribe button below